I really appreciate getting the opportunity to join everyone today because I think the issues that they're raising are so very, very important in terms of giving ourselves more direction, sense of where we need to go. All of us sitting in this room, I dare to say, consider ourselves to be revolutionaries. Not past work, not step we said every goal over there that we're sacrificed. I'm not thinking about the reforms that take the foot off the masses of people's necks so that they can breathe better. Be able to get up the next day and continue to fight. For those that try to misdirect people, they try to confuse people, try to take people away from the revolutionary path. So I think it's very important to take another look at Sister Harriet and other sisters who were involved in struggles, both in the African American movement, in the indigenous movement, in the Latin American movement, the Vietnamese movement, Cuba, Venezuela, the African continent, and every liberation movement there. There has not been a movement in the world where there have not been healings. There has not been a movement in the world where women weren't able to stand up and use any means necessary to fight for their liberation and to take the shackles off of them that the oppressor had placed there, and also to oppose men who didn't have the courage to take the kind of stands that they needed to take, even simple stands like voting, much less picking up a weapon, much less not taking a bribe from the oppressor, much less not being a think and a spy for the oppressor, much less not betraying, liberation efforts to the oppressor. Besides those kind of traitors, they also stood up against anybody whose knees got really weak. And Harriet Tubman was one of those. If you thought you were going to start out with her on this road to freedom, and you got a certain way away from the plantation, and all of a sudden your knees got weak and your back got bent over, and you thought you were going to stop and go back and tell the master, you were only leaving one way. You were either going with her or you were not going anywhere. So these sisters, what I really like about some of the stuff that I'm beginning to read about her, and this is one piece that we're going to try to have, is called the Jailbreak Out of History, which puts her in the proper context. We hope to have copies of this to both give to young people at Boys and Girls High, but also to sell as a fundraiser, and we're going to get a pretty good deal from the person who publishes this to be able to do that. But one of the things that this book does is that it really puts her in a place where you understand the fact that we were and we are engaged in warfare. And that she was not just a nurse and a spy and a conductor in post, but she was a guerrilla warrior who went behind the enemy lines repeatedly to get other people to safe havens and to freedom. She freed herself, and if you go back and read, she started as a 7-year-old running away from a master who decided that she was going to put her set the tone for how she was going to function in this woman's house by beating her on the very first day that she came, all across her face and her body and her back. And she ran away after that. She slept with pigs and fought with the baby pigs to try to survive. Eventually, she realized as a small child she had no place else to go, so she went back. Another time she stood up, and we talk about our youth. She stood up as a teenager and blocked the exit of the overseer to keep him from pursuing a man who was running away, who was a slave, so he would not be beaten. She suffered a severe wound that carried through. That's when she got the wound in her head that caused her to have a series of defects and physical defects and going almost into a coma afterwards. But imagine all of that happening to her, and she still was determined that she was not going to just be free herself, but she had a responsibility to free other people. So we have to look at what are the lessons and how do we apply them today? Because it's one thing to, none of us here sitting here, I know some of us have been teachers, but none of us here consider ourselves our primary focus in life is to be an academic in the ivory tower, where we read and study, but we make no application to everyday life. Where we read and study, and we really don't get the essence of the real lessons, and we don't know how to also help other people learn, which is critical, since most of us sitting here have a lot of gray hair, that we have to, it is incumbent upon us to make sure that we help support and shape young revolutionaries to move forward and carry the struggle against this monster moving it ahead. Harriet, to me, one of the greatest lessons from Harriet is that she was very brave, and she was very courageous, but she never did anything by herself. She never did anything by herself. She was courageous enough to stand up and do what she play her role and do what she was doing, but she was smart enough to know no revolution could take place just by her being brave. So when they talk about her being a spy, this woman that wrote this book makes a joke out of it. How could somebody be a spy by themselves? There had to be a network of people. And she talks about the communal nature of women, even under slavery, even under oppression, that women, that was part of their survival, to have a communal way of both supporting each other when they're in immense pain, when their children are being taken, when they just see a child being killed, when their men are being taken, when they've been beaten. Who provided that kind of support so they could continue to do what they had to do? It was a communal network of women. It was a communal network of spies. It was a communal network of guerrilla warriors. So another thing I just recently learned, someone sent me this from the South, that they recently unearthed some artifacts about the Comanche River in Beaufort, I might not be pronouncing it, Beaufort, South Carolina, where Harriet, how do you say it? Beaufort. That documented the fact that Harriet was involved in freeing over 756 slaves from the major plantations in the area, and it was a clear military act. She did this in conjunction with the Union Army, but it was all organized, and they had a way to send a signal out to people to know that they should come to that river and that they were going to be free. So it was over. So that was a military operation. Why is it that the way Harriet has been characterized, the way Rosa Parks has been characterized, the way Ella Baker's strategic mind has been belittled and put under a rock, as well as Fannie Lou Hamer, as well as so many other people who are everyday people? That's what they came out of. Because what they try to do is say, oh yeah, well, we can't say those people didn't exist, but they were extraordinary. They weren't like everybody else. No, it's everyday people coming out of oppression, fighting for that together that makes a revolution. It is not one individual. It certainly ain't going to be one white man. It ain't going to be one black man. It ain't going to be one Asian man or one indigenous man. If he or she gets up and thinks they're going to do it by themselves, they're going to be in for a rude awakening. Because you have to have respect for the fact of who you're going up against. We're going up against a military operation. We must have something to counter that, and that can only be countered by the people's power. Organized, conscious, and strategic. Not just doing things by the seat of our pants, not just doing things without a plan. None of what Harriet ever did was without a plan. Never what Harriet did was without a systematic connection between people and organizations that would be able to help you from one step to the next. She couldn't have freed the people in the South just by going down there with one gun. She couldn't have done that. She couldn't have gotten into safety just because she was a very powerful woman. She couldn't have done that. And if we look at each person, we could see that it takes a movement. So the question to us in 2013
100 years after the sister made her transition, what is it that we are going to do? What lessons do we learn that we're going to truly implement and not just talk about? Who are we going to tactically and strategically work with and support to organize this movement? How do we determine that we're moving from one place to the other to actually carry out the building of this movement? If we don't begin to look at things that way, we will continue to stroke ourselves into a coma. And that doesn't build a movement. So we cannot be satisfied about what we did in the past. We cannot be satisfied with what we understand now. We cannot be satisfied with what we write and what we distribute and what we say at rallies. If it doesn't end the end result, even if it's 5 people, if everything we do results in more conscious activists, more committed people, understanding what their challenge is and committing themselves to take that challenge up and fight. That's how we have to, because if you look at what she did, she started out, yes, through oppression, you could learn that I hurt real bad when a man takes advantage of you. That doesn't automatically lead to you being a revolutionary. You know, you can work on a job and know you're being screwed, but that doesn't lead you to being an activist, revolutionary trade unionist or unionist and organizing your workplace. Some people just say, well, I don't like it here, let me go find another job. Instead of saying, I don't like it here, and I'm going to start talking to other people about not liking it here, and then we're going to talk about what we can do. If we don't know all of what we can do, we're going to find out. And that is, to me, that's one of the lessons for Harriet. Because you know, there were no organizing meetings or rallies on the plantation. So she had to seek that out. So when you find someone who is seeking out the answers to get rid of their oppression, that is an advanced worker. That is a budding revolutionary. Because that person is constantly thinking, analyzing, trying to problem solve and figure out how to get out of something. What is our role? To provide information and say, this is how other people got out of it. This is what people are doing today. This is what people are doing across the country. This is what people did historically. Does this information inform you about what your actions are and what you can do? If we don't begin to talk more to people, and I know people are doing this, but we need to do it more. Because our goal of talking to people is not just selling a paper and getting them to a program. Our goal is to make people know that they have the right and the capacity to be a revolutionary. That they have a responsibility to change this society from the numbing oppression that exists to something that's healthy, that people can flourish, that their children can flourish. The other thing is how we need to unpackage how the media, how the school books, how the magazines, how the TV and the films always distort and try to submerge any kind of revolutionary history. If there is some kind of fight back, there's one brave man that comes scooting in and he takes over and he frees everybody and he's wonderful and he's Superman. Nothing is said about how the Palestinian people are organizing a fight back. Nothing is said about how the South Africans fought to overthrow the yoke. Nothing is said about the Latinos and the indigenous people that fought in this country and fought back. Nothing is said. We had to go to Cuba to go to the Revolutionary Museum to see the fight in Cuba and also particularly to see the role of women in that fight. Why is it that we don't know that here? Because they're not stupid. The ruling class is very clear. Once any people who are oppressed find out about their history of resistance, they're going to embrace it, they're going to be empowered by it, and they're going to use and be informed by it. So what is our other role is to make sure that all means of what we do, writing, speaking, films, programs, that we are instilling in the people and transmitting information about the history of struggle. So Harriet Tubman is about that history.